Time for Focus, and today we're heading to Spain, a country currently in a state of political stalemate and one where corruption scandals are rife. The two issues are in fact linked, with corruption allegations getting in the way of government forming efforts after elections delivered a hung parliament twice. Anti-corruption movements Podemos and Ciudadanos making gains at the expense of traditional main parties. But as Sarah Morris reports, their mission is far from straightforward.
Former treasurers accused of running a slush fund. Representatives on the board of a savings bank accused of abusing expenses. The next 6 months will see dozens of members of the People's Party in the dock. In a bid to form a government, caretaker Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy signs an anti-corruption pact.
It's vital for people to believe that Spaniards can finally trust their political leaders, their deputies or mayors. That's why this corruption pact is absolutely necessary to win back the trust of Spaniards.
Spain's fourth largest party is out to clean up politics in a country where corruption scandals are rife. One of the most famous cases is Valencia, the third largest Spanish city, where Laura and her parents have spent years highlighting the squandering of public money.
I've brought you here because it's a symbol of tourism here in Valencia. It's an obligatory stop, the city of arts and science, but it's a symbol of waste. It cost 1.3 million euros.
That's 6 times the initial budget earmarked by the mayor. The 7 buildings making up the complex contain defects, and not all of them are in use. A year ago, and after 24 years in power, Rita Barbera, a People's Party veteran, loses the city and leaves it in debt. The mayor and 47 people close to her are accused of illegal party financing and taking bribes, all at the taxpayers' expense.
We're just 10 minutes away by foot from the City of Arts and Science, and we can't figure out how money was used for such monumental projects like that one, while our children are being taught in shipping containers.
The council spent €1 billion on schools that were never built. The pupils are starting their 7th school year in these temporary buildings. In many parts of the city, the containers have become permanent schools because of a shortage of funds. To stop practices like this, some Spaniards have decided to blow the whistle on corruption at a high personal cost.
I worked in sports and youth management for 20 years and I left my job 2 years ago after the town hall was convicted for harassment.
Ana Garrido used to work for Boadilla del Monte Town Hall, a wealthy Madrid suburb. When Arturo González Panero was re-elected mayor in 2007, she rapidly had her suspicions. He signed more and more public contracts without tenders. Ana investigated further.
I cross-checked the data between companies and politicians and realised there was a network of corruption affecting the People's Party. And I learned that a businessman, Paco Correa, was at the head of that network.
Thanks to the evidence she gave to the anti-corruption prosecutor, in 2009 the Gürtel affair erupted, a bombshell for the People's Party. Most of the town halls in the Madrid region were accused of embezzling public funds. It was the start of a witch hunt against Ana, who no longer works as a civil servant.
I make jewellery, and if they finally let me work after all these legal cases and the harassment, I should be able to get back on my feet and organise my time, as I wish to continue my work and my conferences to fight corruption.
One of the regions where Ciudadanos has won support is in Madrid. After 1.5 years in power and in mid-debate over the state of the region, the party reminds the PP its support comes at a price.
The fact that you're applying new politics is because in this parliament there's a party called Ciudadanos, obliging us to do this.
Profiting from fragmented parliaments, the new centrist party is pragmatic. It backs the party that has won the most seats in elections, but as long as the old parties are prepared to change.
I think we've opened up a breach in the Madrid region and also in the regions where Ciudadanos has been decisive, like in Andalucía, Rioja, Castilla y León. We've forced the parties that are ruling those regions today to sign our anti-corruption pact. The regeneration of regional politics started 12 months ago, and we've opened up the path to national politics.
Sadly, Spaniards are going to have to be patient before political life here is fully transparent and clean. That same day, Ciudadanos presented a bill to protect whistleblowers like Anna. The PP voted it down, and the Socialists abstained.
Joining me now from Cardiff University's Hispanic Studies Department is Andrew Dowling. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, I think it's fair to say that corruption is nothing new in Spain. So why is it that more and more Spaniards are saying enough is enough?
I think that the main reason why we're seeing so much new information about corruption is what I'd call a cultural change in Spanish society since the economic crisis hit. If you want, the tolerance for corruption was greater during the boom period of the Spanish economy from the mid-1990s till about 2007. Once the economic crisis started hitting ordinary people and the Spanish middle classes, their anger has risen exponentially year by year against the political class, whereas before they were perhaps annoyed, but if they were also personally doing quite well, there was less irritation.
What about tolerance for inexperienced politicians? Because this stalemate has lasted so long now in Spain. Are people perhaps going to get tired of Ciudadanos and Podemos and actually turn back to the traditional parties?
It's possible to some extent. I mean, should there be a third general election, which is currently still the most likely option amongst the various options available, we're certainly going to see a degree of disenchantment amongst people who, we can expect a pretty low turnout from people. And it's probably more likely than not that the main beneficiaries will be the traditional Conservative Party, less so the Spanish Socialists. But I think if you want to understand what's going on with the corruption question, really, I think you have to very much see it in terms of Spanish political life since the death of Franco and the mid-1970s. There's been around two main parties, the Conservatives and the Social Democrats. It's now a four-party system. So what these two traditional parties were able to get away with, they no longer can get away with, because both of them have got a new political force, Podemos and Ciudadanos, questioning them and challenging them. And the old ways of operating, it's going to be harder and harder for these two parties to continue.
What do you make of the pact mentioned in our report there, the anti-corruption pact the PP signed with Ciudadanos?
Well, I think it's highly significant because Ciudadanos is, if you want, a new centre-right party that's very much made up of a younger generation, tends to be mostly voters under 40 who in particular are much more intolerant of a culture of corruption. And I think it's highly significant that agreement prioritise corruption, prioritise the cleansing, if you want, of the political system, cleansing of the Spanish bureaucracy of issues of corruption, that those were the major issues that those two parties, or led by Ciudadanos, felt it was necessary to address.
And Spain's corruption scandals haven't just affected politicians, have they? Royals too. How damaging would you say to the monarchy has Princess Christina's trial been?
Well, I think there have been a number of individuals in the Spanish royal family who have been involved in various forms of corruption, including a lot of speculation about the position of the Spanish king who abdicated, which is a very unusual thing to happen in monarchies, even constitutional monarchies. And the monarchy is still relatively popular, but what we have seen, and again, particularly voters under 40, is a growth of anti-monarchical sentiment, a growth of Spanish republicanism to a level not seen since the 1970s. And we can now say that there is quite a strong segment now of Spanish political life, 35%, that is quite strongly anti-monarchical. So it will very much depend on what happens with the figures surrounding the royal family and the royal family themselves over the next 10 to 15 years, what happens with that sector of Spanish life.
Now, getting back to politics, if we look at things on a local level, a national level, you seem to suggest that pact was a positive step. What else needs to be done to tackle corruption?
Well, there are a number of really big issues that need to be addressed. One of them is what's called closed party lists, which sounds a bit obscure, but it basically means Spain's two traditional political parties have had full control over the candidates that they select for office, which basically means that, for example, if you're a parliamentarian selected by the Socialists for Madrid, you're chosen by somebody higher up. Therefore, the next election comes around 4 years later, you have to show that you're still a good citizen in terms of the party. So your loyalty to the top is very important if you want to continue in office and continue to build your career. So this, if you want, this closed party list system means that parties are highly centralized in Spain and very much controlled by the top. And what we get is very little criticism of major issues coming from within Spain's two traditional parties. So I think that's one simple but very difficult issue that needs to be addressed.
And just to put it into European context, when it comes to corruption, how does Spain compare to some of its neighbours?
Well, I think we should place Spain within what we can call Southern Europe. And Southern Europe can include France for our purposes. And Spain is more corrupt than France, but it's less corrupt than Italy and substantially less corrupt than Greece and, for example, many of the southern East European states in the Balkans. So the corruption in Spain is relatively high, certainly compared to northern European cultures in Germany and Britain, but it's not as bad as some in southern Europe.
All right, well, thank you very much indeed for your time and your analysis. Andrew Dowling from Cardiff University. And thank you for watching. Quick break. I'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go away.